The book is Defying Isis. Johnnie Moore is the author, and I'm speaking to him all week, so we're going over various aspects of not just ISIS, but the persecution of Christians, the attack on freedom of religion. It's broader than just Christians, but they're the main target, really. They're most in danger of simply disappearing from entire regions that were the homeland and the heartland of Christianity. Let's talk about the motivation behind ISIS, because it's not the Muslim Brotherhood, it's not Hezbollah, it's not Hamas. I mean, all of these are problematic in their own way, but there are different motivations. This is something new.
Yeah, it's new in that it aims to be a state, a caliphate. You know, Osama bin Laden believed that the caliphate would come, but his mentality was that it would take another generation or something. I mean, he was a pioneer. He was working to fight all these powers and to work against the United States and Europe and everything else. But I think, like, if you sat down and you talked to him, as very few people did, I don't think he would have ever said that he thought he would see the caliphate in his own lifetime. So this is what's so remarkable about ISIS, is that they have moved in, they've taken advantage of a crisis, right? So the political crisis in Syria and the neighboring countries. They moved in, they consolidated their influence in land, they moved with lightning speed, taking over the second largest city in Iraq, Mosul, and they have created a state, a caliphate. And, you know, theologically, this becomes problematic for a certain type of Muslim, right? So, you know, as we've said over and over this week, you know, none of us are accusing the majority of Muslims of believing in this wild, crazy ideology of ISIS. But there is a certain group of Muslims around the world that do. And those that do feel particularly pulled at the idea of this caliphate. And so they might not necessarily agree with ISIS's ideology or their tactics, but because it is a caliphate, and because the caliphate does seem to be standing up to Western powers, they feel like they haven't an option but to join the fulfillment of the prophecy. And so you see ISIS now is made up of people from 90 countries traveling across mainly the border of Turkey, moving into the country, and whether or not they agree with it, if they believe this is a prophecy that's being fulfilled, they end up inside of it.
This is a very interesting point, because people don't generally know what the caliphate is. The caliphate ended, wasn't that long ago. The Ottoman Empire eventually folded. The First World War, the British and Allies won, which is why the British had Palestine, that became Israel, and so on. You're right in saying this. There are many Muslims who totally reject the graphic violence of ISIS, but they do believe in a caliphate. So they're sort of torn. We don't like the way they're behaving, but there should be a caliphate. There are no national boundaries or borders in the House of Islam. The entire Islamic world has to be one state, and the next step is the rest of the world has to be part of it.
And this is why and I know this isn't very popular to say, but it absolutely is a holy war. But it's not a Christian-Muslim holy war.
No.
It's an inter-Islamic holy war. That's what we're watching play out in Iraq and Syria.
Yeah. Because let's talk about Syria and Iraq. And we have to be careful here, because no one is attacking the United States. You're un-American. I have the greatest regard for the United States. But Western foreign policy has not been good for Christians in the Middle East. Saddam Hussein was a monster. He was a brute. He didn't persecute Christians. Assad and his father, dictators, not as bad as Saddam, but they're despots. They protected Christians. They removed, Assad partly removed, the vacuum. It's not filled by secular democratic liberals saying, let's all hug each other. It's filled by the only power, which is Islamism.
And these bad actors have taken advantage of the opportunity, and the world has largely slept because of it, slept while it was happening, and that's why we're in the situation we're in. I mean, you know, in Iraq alone, a decade ago, there were 1.5 million Christians. And now the most liberal estimate is there are only 300,000 left, and they're distributed across refugee camps in the most deplorable conditions you can imagine. But it's probably less than that. It's probably about 150,000. Not to mention all these ancient Christian communities in Syria. And so, you know, if you sit and talk to the average Iraqi, you know, no doubt, you know, Iraqi immigrants to Canada listening to us right now, I mean, you know, to a person, nearly every one of them would tell you they could not ever imagine Mosul without Christians. I mean, this was a city with a thriving Christian population that went back 1,500, 1,600, you know, and, you know, actually, according to the church itself, 2,000 years. This is a 2,000-year church. In Mosul, the second largest city of Iraq, that was somehow taken over by a vagabond bunch of jihadists on the back of pickup trucks. And now, for the first time in all these centuries, there are no church bells ringing in Mosul. There's no communion being taken. There are no Christian songs being sung. Every single Christian has been eliminated. They've either been displaced or killed Every single one of them. And a very, very small group of them converted. But the vast majority of them didn't convert. When they were faced with deny Jesus Christ and live, or believe and die, hundreds and hundreds, thousands of them said, Jesus is not only worth living for, he's worth dying for. And so you can kill me if you want to kill me, but I'm not going to deny Jesus. In my book, Defying Isis, I sent research teams all into northern Iraq and captured all of these stories, because I believe a Fox's Book of Martyrs is being written in our modern day. And they write the stories of these people. Stories like this pastor in northern Iraq who went from house to house when he heard that ISIS was coming to the village. And he looked at the families and he said, they're going to come, they're going to ask you if you believe in Jesus, and just tell them that you love Jesus. And it was sort of a coy way, because maybe you get a moderate member of ISIS if such a thing exists, and you know, but Jesus was a prophet too, and so maybe you'll get by. And he said, but if they don't let you off, they don't let you live, don't worry, it'll only hurt for a moment. And the story I write about in the book is this particular family he was telling that story to, that ISIS comes, they ask them the questions, they refuse to deny Jesus, and it only hurt for a moment. And they all died, martyrs. For 2,000 years, Christians have been beheaded, they've been put on stakes and burned alive, they've been tortured, their property has been confiscated, and in the land where the Apostle Paul was converted on the road to Damascus, and the apostle who was himself beheaded, we're witnessing a once-in-a-thousand-year crisis where these ancient Christian communities face the possibility of total extermination, total genocide, while the world is sleeping. And I just had to tell their stories. And that's why I wrote Defying Isis. And it changed my life doing it.
Well, thank God you did. There is another story, I know you'll know it, of a family who were told, no, just say you love Jesus. He's regarded as a prophet within a sense. Say you love Jesus, it'll be okay. They did. And the ISIS gang said, okay, moved on. They came back again to check on them. And the children were home, and they said, what do you think of Jesus? And they said, he's the Son of God. And they beheaded the children in front of the parents. That's not an isolated incident either.
ISIS has committed more crimes against women and children than any group in our modern history, intentionally targeting women and children. You know, I like lots of millennials, I've been involved in combating human trafficking, and you know, when all of that started a few years ago and the awareness was being raised, you know, people just didn't believe it existed. It was so underground. No one paid attention to it. But today what we're seeing is ISIS would move into Yazidi or Christian communities, and they would kidnap not a few women, they would kidnap hundreds of women. In a few cases, in one fell swoop, thousands of women, and they would put them and their children on the slave markets. They would imprison or behead the men. They'd sell the women, and not just adult women. I mean, we just recently, it was a big international news story, a number of Yazidi women and children escaped. You know, I don't remember how many, but a few dozen or something. There was a 9-year-old girl among them. And when she arrived into the refugee camp, she had been raped by 10 different men, and she came back, she's 9 years old, pregnant. And I don't understand why the world can sleep, why all this horrific thing, all these horrific things are happening. And as followers of Jesus Christ, I just believe we have to raise our voice. We have to tell the world this is happening. And you know, and I wrote the book because every Christian I talked to when I visited Iraq, every single one told me the same thing, from an archbishop to an illiterate peasant living in a refugee camp that had no job, no life to begin with, and now they have even less. Every single one of them told me the same thing. They said, we feel forgotten. And I told them, I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure you're forgotten no more.
It's the noblest of intention. I mean, thank God you did write the book, Defying Isis, just in the last 30 seconds we have, and we'll get back to this tomorrow. But is it working? I mean, we want to say, yes, people are now standing up. Are people standing up? Are they aware? Are they prepared to do something to stop all this happening?
More and more people are talking. More and more pressure is going on members of government in every nation in the world. But the problem is, it's for some of these communities, it's too little, too late. And so now is the time to do more, and to do it more quickly than ever before.
All right. The book is Defying Isis by Johnnie Moore. I mean, it's the first step to buy this, read this book, be informed, and that's the step, if you like. And then the next is action. It's not just a book to be read, it's a book to be prayed about and to motivate us into action. Thank you so much for writing this.
Thank you.